Hello everyone, and thanks for being with us. And let me start out by simply wishing you a Merry Christmas. I'm Buddy Pittman, and through the years, for myself and for our family, the Christmas season has always been one of the most magical times of the year. I mean, after all, the Christmas classic proclaims it's the most wonderful time of the year. For a lot of us, Christmas starts in Bethlehem as a celebration of the birth of Jesus, a clear example of God's gift to the world. For a lot of folks, Christmas starts at the North Pole with Santa, reindeer, and the presents. But regardless of where your Christmas season starts, hopefully it will be a time of sharing, giving, and goodwill for all. Many may not be aware that it was the second president, John Adams, not George Washington, who actually was the first president to live in what would come to be known as the White House. It was originally called just the Presidential Mansion. That was until Theodore Roosevelt later gave it the name that we know today, the White House. The first Adams family moved into the home in November of 1800, and it was here that Adams held the very first White House Christmas party. It was not until 1870 that Christmas was declared an official federal holiday in the United States, thanks to President Ulysses S. Grant. Each Christmas season, it seems like everywhere you look, you see a pot of beautiful, bright, red-colored flowers. Yes, we're talking about poinsettias. Well, the story of poinsettias goes all the way back to the 16th century in Mexico, where it was a tradition to leave a gift at the church altar on Christmas. Legend has it that a young child came to the altar but was too poor to provide a gift for the celebration of the Nativity of Jesus. At the spot where the child knelt to pray, a beautiful plant sprouted with bright red leaves. In Mexico, it's called the flower of the Holy Night. The first U.S. minister to Mexico, Joel Roberts Poinsett, was so impressed with the plant that he brought samples back to the U.S. in 1828. Yes, the flower was named the poinsettia in his honor. Christmas, of course, is a time for music. Those holiday classics put us in the spirit for the season. One of the most loved carols is O Holy Night, an anthem that has a rather inspired and unusual story, one which began in France in the 1800s. O Holy Night was originally written as a poem, and when the music was added, it became one of the most beloved anthems of all time. As the story goes, a parish priest in a small French town asked a local poet, Placide Cappeau, to write a poem to be read at the Christmas Eve Mass. Known more for his poetry than his church attendance, Placide was surprised but honored to fulfill the request. During a long carriage ride to Paris, Placide used the Gospel of Luke as his guide, as he imagined witnessing the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. By the time he arrived in Paris, Cantique de Noël had been completed. Moved by his own work, Cappeau decided that his Cantique de Noël was not just a poem, but a song in need of a master musician's hand. So he turned to one of his friends, Adolphe Charles Adams. Another surprise choice, since Adams was a man of Jewish ancestry, and the words of Cantique de Noël represented a day he didn't even celebrate. Nevertheless, Adams quickly went to work and married Placide's words with music. The song was performed just 3 weeks later at a midnight mass on Christmas Eve. O Holy Night was translated into English and brought to the United States by American writer John Sullivan Dwight. But he saw the song not so much as a wonderful Christmas anthem, but as a political statement. As an ardent abolitionist, Dwight pointed to the lyrics of the third verse. "Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease." Words which Dwight felt supported his own stance against slavery. So we see that this song, O Holy Night, requested by a forgotten parish priest, inspiring words by a man who eventually walked away from the church, music written by a man of Jewish faith and translated into English by a man as a political statement. This unusual quartet of individuals were somehow brought together to create this masterpiece. And as Paul Harvey would say, now the rest of the story. On Christmas Eve in 1906, Reginald Fessenden, a former chief chemist for Thomas Edison, did the impossible. Fessenden spoke into a microphone, and for the first time in history, a man's voice was broadcast over the airwaves. On that Christmas Eve, Fessenden began reading from the Bible.
And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord.
After finishing his recitation on the birth of Christ, Fessenden picked up his violin and played O Holy Night. The very first song ever sent through the air via radio waves. O Holy Night has been sung millions of times in churches in every corner of the world and has become one of the most beautiful inspired pieces of music ever created. When it comes to green energy, well, of course, Santa is way ahead of his time. I mean, after all, he rides around in a sleigh that's pulled by reindeer. And if you've ever watched the movie Elf, you know that the sleigh also gets a big boost from some good old Christmas spirit. This legend of a reindeer-drawn sleigh was made popular by Clement Moore's classic tale, The Night Before Christmas. And by the way, did you know that the most famous reindeer of them all, Rudolph, was not actually part of Moore's reindeer team? Young Rudolph did not come along until 1939, when the department store Montgomery Ward published a promotional coloring book. The story of Rudolph was created by Montgomery Ward employee Robert May. In the first year, Montgomery Ward distributed almost 2.4 million copies of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Rudolph became a Christmas legend when Robert May's brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, turned the story into a song. In 1949, country singer Gene Autry released his single, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows.
In that first year, Autry's recording sold over 2.5 million copies. That was just the beginning of a long list of Christmas songs for Johnny Marks. In addition to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Marks also wrote Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, A Holly Jolly Christmas, and I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. Ironically, Johnny Marks was Jewish and did not celebrate the Christmas holiday.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history.
Christmas time, of course, is prime time for all the commercials and advertising and marketing. Ad agencies try to put their best foot forward during the holiday season, a tradition that actually started back before the invention of television. The world's first singing commercial aired on radio in 1926 on Christmas Eve. The product? was Wheaties cereal.
Have you tried Wheaties?
That Wheaties quartet was made up of an undertaker, a bailiff, a printer, and a businessman. Wheaties sales were so bad at the time that General Mills considered dropping the cereal. But the singing ad was such a huge success that Wheaties was saved, and now, a century later, is still the breakfast of champions.
Why, Wheaties, the best breakfast food in the land.
I'm sure you're all familiar with Denny's restaurants. The chain actually began back in 1953 as Danny's Donuts, but now the company operates about 2,000 Denny's restaurants worldwide. Since the chain opened its doors some 7 decades ago, it has literally been open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays, yes, including Christmas. In fact, the chain says that Christmas Day is one of their busiest days all year. In 1988, however, Denny's decided to break with tradition and give their 60,000 employees a special gift, a Christmas Day off with pay. But Denny's ran into one problem. Since they were always open 24/7, over half of their restaurants did not even have locks on the doors. And the ones that did have locks, the employees did not even know where the keys were. Denny's quickly had to install a whole bunch of locks, just in time enough to keep their Christmas promise to their employees.
Oh, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year!
In Japan, Santa seems to get a run for his money from the Colonel. That's right, you can forget about the turkey and dressing because chicken is the entree of choice in Japan, particularly chicken from Kentucky Fried. The trend started back in 1947 when Colonel Sanders and Company launched a Kentucky for Christmas campaign in Japan. The dinner featured fried chicken and wine. Today, KFC is a Christmas tradition for many in Japan. The BBC estimates nearly 4 million families treat themselves to KFC at Christmas time. In fact, the demand has become so great in Japan that reservations are often required. No Christmas season would ever be complete without watching the holiday classic, It's a Wonderful Life. The film is perhaps one of the most recognized Christmas films ever, starring Jimmy Stewart. The film about how one man can touch so many lives, even to this day still touches hearts every holiday season. The story was written by Philip Van Doren Stern in 1940 and was originally named The Greatest Gift. Stern sent it out simply as a Christmas message to family and friends. It would, however, wind up in the hands of movie director Frank Capra, who turned it into a movie and released the film in 1946 with the new title, It's a Wonderful Life. Most interestingly, the film was shot in California during the summer with 90-degree temps. Capra, who had a degree in engineering, along with his special effects director, Russell Shearman, designed a concoction of sugar, soap flakes, water, and firefighting foam called foamite to turn a 4-acre California set into the snowy town of Bedford Falls. While the film never won any traditional Oscars, it did get a technical award for the snow. When it was first released, the film was considered a flop, partly because the FBI issued a warning that the film was the communist infiltration of the movie business. The FBI objected to the way that the movie portrayed the banker, describing him as a Scrooge-type bad guy, a common trick used by the communists, according to J. Edgar Hoover. Through the years, however, the film has found its own niche. It is now considered by the American Film Institute as the #1 most inspirational movie of all time. Director Frank Capra says it's not only the greatest film he ever made, but it's the greatest film anybody ever made. In that same year that It's a Wonderful Life premiered, another holiday melody debuted. All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth. It was written by Don Garber and performed by a group called the Satisfiers on Perry Como's Christmas special. The song, however, did not catch on very well, but 2 years later, the song became a big hit as Spike Jones and his City Slickers released a zany remake of the song. The band's trumpet player and vocalist George Rock provided the most convincing child's voice in the remake. Ironically, Rock was a hulk of a figure that was a former college football player. It worked out, however, and the single was certified as a gold record and reached number 1 on the Billboard Pop chart. The Christmas Song is a holiday classic that was written back in 1945 by Mel Torme and Robert Wells. Torme tells the story that it was a hot summer afternoon when he went over to Wells's house. He said that he noticed some phrases scribbled on a notepad laying on the piano. Phrases like chestnuts roasting, Jack Frost nipping, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Torme asked Wells about what the scribbles meant, and Wells said it was just so hot that he was jotting down some cold weather thoughts to try and cool his mind. Torme, however, was inspired, and just a short 40 minutes later, the duo had composed a song that will forever be a holiday classic.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose.
Nat King Cole, of course, made the song famous, but it has been sung by artists of every generation and every genre, from Bing Crosby to Frank Sinatra, from Katy Perry to Michael Bublé, from Stevie Wonder to Justin Bieber and Usher. Clearly, there is something special about this cool Christmas song written on a very hot day some 8 decades ago.
Merry Christmas to you.
Another holiday standard, White Christmas, was written by Irving Berlin while sitting poolside in Phoenix in 1940. The song is synonymous with Bing Crosby, who first performed the song on radio on Christmas Day in 1941. The song won an Academy Award for Best Original Song in the movie Holiday Inn in 1942.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know.
With over 100 million units sold, White Christmas is recognized by Guinness as the #1 Christmas song ever, a classic that took Bing Crosby only 18 minutes to record, and a song that was #1 on the charts for 11 weeks in 1942, and then returned to #1 again in 1943 and 1944.
May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be
One of our favorite holiday songs each Christmas, of course, is Jingle Bells. But did you know that that song was actually written for a different holiday? In 1857, Jingle Bells was written by James Lord Pierpont, who was a church organist and wrote the song for his Sunday school class to perform at Thanksgiving, a song titled "The One-Horse Open Sleigh." The song was so well received that he revived the song 1 month later for their Christmas festivities, calling it Jingle Bells. The song also has an historic significance. In 1965, Jingle Bells became the very first song ever broadcast from space, when astronauts Tom Hammond and Wally Schirra aboard Gemini 6 performed the song on a harmonica and jingle bells that they had snuck aboard the spacecraft.
That was 5-7, not 6. You're too much, 6.
If you are one of the lucky ones who get a Christmas bonus, you can probably thank F.W. Woolworth, and of course your boss. Woolworth's department store instituted the bonus program for its employees back in 1899. Woolworths gave each employee $5 for each year of service, with a total limit of $25. Now keep in mind that $25 back then equals almost $800 today. Woolworths may have been called a five and dime, but its Christmas bonuses proved to be anything but. You know, if you have a real Christmas tree in your house, you can probably thank good old Charlie Brown.
What's going on here?
Back in the late 1950s, aluminum trees were becoming the most popular choice. They were sturdy, relatively lightweight, and eliminated the mess of the pine needles. But then came along A Charlie Brown Christmas, which aired on television for the first time in 1965. At one key point in the program, Charlie Brown refuses Lucy's advice to get a fake tree, and he sets out in search for a real Christmas tree. As it turned out, people were like Charlie Brown and wanted real Christmas trees. In 1969, just 4 years after Charlie Brown's Christmas aired for the very first time, aluminum trees were all but phased out, and real Christmas trees were the popular choice.
Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown!
Here are a few facts that you can share at the Christmas holiday table this year. The Statue of Liberty was gifted to the U.S. by the French on Christmas Day in 1886. It weighs 225 tons, and thus you could consider it as the biggest Christmas gift in the world. The U.S. Postal Service issued its very first Christmas stamp in 1962. The department printed its largest number ever for a specialty stamp, 350 million, and they quickly sold out. The supply was replenished, and by the end of the year, 1 billion stamps had been printed. Of course, back then in 1962, the price of a stamp was just 4 cents. By the way, the U.S. Post Office projects that more than 12 billion holiday letters, cards, and packages will be delivered between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day. Do you happen to know which pop singer grew up on an 11-acre Christmas tree farm in Pennsylvania? Well, it was Taylor Swift. In fact, she wrote a song about it, Christmas Tree Farm, written and released in 2019. And do you know what Christmas classic took some 25 years to hit number 1? All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. Her 1994 album, Merry Christmas, sold about 15 million copies. But the album's lead single, All I Want for Christmas Is You, did not hit number 1 until 25 years later in 2019. Noted journalist Eric Sevareid was quoted as saying, "Christmas is a necessity. There has to be at least one day each year to remind us that we're here for something else besides ourselves." The story is told of a young Inuit boy who listened very carefully to his teacher talk about giving gifts at Christmas time to carry on the tradition of love and generosity that was shown at the very first Christmas. On December 25th, the young man showed up with a gift for his teacher, a piece of weathered, polished whalebone. The teacher was so impressed by the gift, she said, "Young man, where did you get this beautiful gift?" The boy pointed to a spot on the map several miles away over the frozen terrain. The teacher was so touched by the gift, she said, "Young man, you did not have to travel that far to get me a gift." The young boy replied, "The long walk is part of the gift." So at Christmas time, and truly always, I guess it really is the thought that counts. The Bible tells us in the book of Acts that it is more blessed to give than to receive. And hopefully that is the spirit in which we will all approach this Christmas season. I'm Buddy Pittman. Thanks for being with us. Hopefully we've been able to share a little bit of the joyous light on this most wonderful and blessed time of the year. So as we say goodbye, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.